Welcome back to another episode of Post Mormon Peace. I'm your host, Derek Williams. I'm excited to be with you today. I've been kind of thinking about some of the different things that I could share or different directions that I could go. And I decided to make this episode earlier on in the podcast about different books that have been meaningful for me in navigating things and in working through and kind of developing my own beliefs and systems, finding what's going to guide me in life. Um, for me, books have definitely been the most impactful. Um, obviously conversations and talking with others have been good. Podcasts have been good at times, but I really enjoy books because I feel like it allows you to get into someone's mind and not be able to hear other narratives or questions about it, to really just kind of consider what someone else is going through. I've experienced this too with my dad. A couple years ago, I gave him the gift for Father's Day of, I think it's called Storyworth, but it's, one of those things that basically like once a week they'll get an email prompt to answer a question. And they basically just kind of type and share their experiences. It could be different questions like, what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you? Or, what's the time that you've ever, been the most brave? What's the most embarrassing moment you've ever had? Different questions like that. And they'll fill it out and write about it. And over time, they will basically have written a book. And it's been interesting for me because I get emails every time my dad writes in this. And a lot of times I've heard the stories before, but when I can read it as the reader, when I can like get into his head, it allows me to like kind of live it through his eyes, where he's told me that experience before, but it's almost like when I hear that experience I may interrupt and ask questions, or someone else may say, oh no, it wasn't exactly like this, don't you remember this happened? And there's the narratives kind of come into play, and it can be a little bit confusing at times, or kind of muddy the waters or the experience. And what I've found is that that's been really fun for me to experience that in that way. And the same thing happens for me with books. It doesn't mean that necessarily everything that I read I embody it and that I agree with it, but it does allow me to get deeper into content. And a big part of what I believe is the process of change in life has to do with getting thoughts or changing thoughts and beliefs that exist in your subconscious. Those thoughts, we have this voice that's always going. um we can't stop that voice. We're not in control of it to an extent. We can control it, but we do it through the conscious mind. We can recognize some of those thoughts consciously, and eventually those conscious thoughts get turned over into our subconscious. So, um, I want to kind of talk through some of those books that have been the most meaningful for me, and just share briefly, what the messages of those books are and how they may be influential to you or not. Again, like I shared before, this is not my intentions in sharing these things and having this podcast is not to tell you this is the path for you. It's rather to tell you, like, these are some of the ideas and thoughts that have been meaningful for me. And I'd love to have other guests on over time that we can talk through these things and see, what is helpful as you're navigating and going through these kinds of experiences. So that being said, let me get to my list. I have a document that I will link and put out there for everyone. And this is basically just to share all of the different books. There are different categories that I have created, for meaningful books for me. The categories are resilience, peace, love and acceptance, changing thoughts and beliefs, and creating your life, and then financial. So I'm not going to go through all of those in the document that I share. I will just put all of that out there. But in what I'm going to talk about in today's episode is mainly just the peace and love and acceptance, because these are the books that have been the most meaningful, um, as far as what we're talking about in this podcast. I'll probably include some thoughts as far as changing your thoughts and beliefs as well, because that is a lot of what we're talking about. So that being said, let's jump into it. First book up is Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. Any of you that are, familiar with Stoicism are probably going to be familiar with Ryan Holiday. He's written a lot of books, and he's definitely breathed life into Stoicism. That's very very old as far in philosophy, and made it much more popular for our modern age. But this book just gives a lot of really good examples of different people that have found ways to be calm, peaceful, and still in their lives. And it is one of my favorite books ever written. I've probably read it 4 or 5 times. Really, really enjoy the work. I like reading one chapter and then just letting myself kind of absorb and dissolve it throughout the day. A quick note: the way that I really like to read books is in a way where I can feel like it is becoming part of me. I want to read a book, and I want to allow those thoughts to really get into my subconscious. I want to allow them to be just part of who I am, so that I don't necessarily have to remember in a time of need, like, oh yeah, this book said to do it this way. But I just want it to kind of be inherent and be part of my nature, be part of who I am. So that may resonate with you, maybe not. However you like to do things, but that's one way to kind of consider that. The next two books on my list are by Eckhart Tolle. The first one is A New Earth, and the second one is The Power of Now. Both of these books were really good in helping me to understand the ego and understand a new way of looking at the world, at people around me. Um, uh, a New Earth specifically can be kind of like a waking up book, where you just start to recognize and to see life through a little bit more of a raw lens, in a way of like taking off the lens that you've seen life, individuals, even animals and creation, in a way that just allows you to kind of see it through a new lens, and that's a lot of fun. um, the next book is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And this book, I feel like, is probably the best entry level book into the idea and concept of mindfulness. I don't know that he even uses the term mindfulness in the book, but that's what he's talking about, and it's very layman's terms. And I think it's like relatively fun book to listen to. It's easy to relate to a lot of the principles that he talks about, as far as like really trying to be able to live in the moment and not get pulled away into the future or the past so much. And that's a big focus of Eckhart Tolle, also in The Power of Now. The next book is The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. And I really enjoyed this book. And there's a lot of peace and love um, all throughout this man's view on life and people. Um, it allowed me to see people that I didn't know as my friends, as fellow inhabitants of the earth, rather than seeing them as strangers. And this was uh, deeply I don't know if soothful is a word, soothing, I guess. It was impactful for me to see how, you know, someone that could be so religious could also just view everyone as their best friend, and in you know, being able to connect and to love people so inherently. Um, the next book is Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Uh, it's a little bit interesting, you know, because if you're listening to this, you're thinking digital minimalism. Like, wait, what are we talking about here? But I really don't feel like digital minimalism is an appropriate title for this book. It felt much more like an approach to a peaceful daily life rather than just a focus on digital minimalism. Obviously, there's a lot of things in there that have to do with that, but I really enjoyed the ideas and applications of this book as far as just how to enjoy the moment and have peace in your life. So that wraps up that section of books. The next section is has to do with love and acceptance, and these books are by far the most powerful principles for me in life. Learning to love and accept yourself, and then in turn do the same for others, leads to greater peace and happiness than anything else. So I would argue that if you have those things, if you have a love and acceptance of yourself and others, I don't know that there's really a whole lot else in life that is really relevant to focus on. Of course, there's plenty of other things that are good in life, but if you have those two things down, you're probably going to inherently have a lot of other good approaches in other areas. So let me go through these books. The first one is Loving What Is by Byron Katie. And I love Byron Katie. At first, it felt a little bit strange to listen to her and her approach, but over time, I really just started to really appreciate um, the way that she approaches issues in life. The Audible version of this book that I listened to, she's done a lot of conferences over the years, and in the book, um, there are recordings from some of her conferences or seminars where, you know, she's talking to people. People are talking through their horrible, traumatic experiences, and she's talking them through it. She's, you know, in a live setting, she's talking through how to mentally work through your thoughts and feelings, um, and beliefs, and it provides a pathway for realizing beliefs that you have that aren't helpful, and finding a way to not get hung on them and to replace them. Next is The Gentle Art of Blessing by Pierre Pradervand, if I'm saying that correctly. Um, this book really opened my eyes to a new way of experiencing love for other people. It helped me to love people that I don't know and to develop greater compassion. And it changed my experience of the world around me, where in the past I may have viewed the world as being a little bit scary and looking at differences between myself and others, and you know, barriers that were in place. And this book just provided some very practical ways for me to bless others, to love other people, and it's led to a lot of love and peace in my life. The next two books are by Anita Morjani. This woman had a near-death experience, and she wrote about it. In the first book was called "Dying to Be Me." Um, Basically, the idea "dying to be me" means she died. She had a near-death experience. To that then led her to really being herself, being authentic, not caring what other people thought about her. Um, it it's very like real life written in a way. Like you can definitely relate to the thoughts that she goes through. um, and it breaks down the construct of firm doctrines in religions and shows the simplicity of love. It brought a lot of peace to me when I read it, and it's also been pretty impactful to others that I know that have gone through this process as well. The next book by her was called "What If This Is Heaven," and it's just beautiful. It's an application for how to live unconditional love. A lot of the outline for this book is other people's questions about things and her answers about how to apply the principles from her first book in everyday life. And uh, I've talked with a lot of people about this idea when I talk about like, hey, like a big thing that you can focus on is just loving and accepting yourself. A lot of times when I mention this, like the first question is from people is like, what does that even mean? Like, what does that look like? That is like so kind of like foreign concept or idea as far as like how to actually apply and live that. And in my opinion, this is arguably one of the best books on recognizing opportunities and actually practicing this in your life. uh Another great book that I enjoyed was The Top Five Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. And so she basically was a hospice type caretaker. And so she listened to the thoughts of a lot of people as they were dying. And, what were the thoughts that they went through. And so, I think it's an impactful book. It's interesting it makes you think of like when you're on your deathbed, what are you going to look back and think, oh, I wish I would have done this a little bit differently. It's great to be thinking of those things now. And one of the simple examples is just what I talked about with Anita Morjani in living life in a way that you don't care what other people think of you. Even for me, in sharing my ideas and thoughts on this podcast, and myself changing in the last year or two, I'm very comfortable to put my thoughts and ideas out there, knowing that I'm not necessarily right. I'm one point of view, but I can put my thoughts out there. Certain people will enjoy it and get a lot out of it. Others will be offended by it and may, not like what I'm saying. Ultimately, that's out of my control. And my goal is just to be as true to myself and authentic to myself as much as possible. So, having a voice in doing that is really good for me. Um, this next book is called The Conscious Parent, and or Conscious Parenting by Shafali Tsabari, if I'm getting that right. Um, and this book is really good from a parenting standpoint, but also just really good at, if you can really apply these principles in just loving and accepting your kids, it's generally going to go a lot back to loving and accepting yourself as well. But for any of you listening that have children, in my opinion, this is the best parenting book that's out there because it is focused on the principles of unconditional love and what does that look like in parenting. And we can always grow and improve here. And so I really, really enjoyed this book. Um, the last category is changing thoughts and beliefs. And let me just share briefly for me, and I think I probably addressed this in the episode where I kind of talked through my story, is one of my biggest realizations or my own personal beliefs is that it doesn't matter so much what you believe as far as much as what does your belief lead you to? Uh, what kind of world do your beliefs allow you to live in? we create our world by our own perspective, and that comes from our thoughts and our beliefs. So I think some of the books that have helped me to focus more on this have been uh, Psycho Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, um, and then Feeling is the Secret by Neville Goddard. And both of these books are old. I mean, they're probably 40, 50 years old. Maybe Neville Goddard is maybe even older than that. But Psycho Cybernetics was written by a plastic surgeon that treated people. And he started to see that certain people, you could take two individuals that are very similar, have some kind of something about their self image that they don't like. They go through the procedure and they look to have experienced the same amount of change or growth outwardly, but some patients um, felt it and felt like it changed their lives, and others where they felt like it didn't improve their lives at all, or that it was even a little bit worse and they were not happy. And so this book is completely uh, created or developed by this plastic surgeon that talked about these beliefs, and essentially that the procedure doesn't matter as much as the beliefs that you go through and that you have about yourself. And so this book was very foundational for me in learning, how do I change beliefs? What does that look like in application? uh Feeling is the Secret by Neville Goddard is a book that really opened me up to accepting that it's okay for me to focus on feelings as much as it is thoughts and deliberation, and the analytical side of things. And a big part of what I've experienced in the last year has been realizing that I actually can grow quite a bit more um, when I focus on the feelings behind certain things rather than the analytical side of things. And I want to talk a little bit more about that in future episodes. But where I just listened to a YouTube video. There's audiobooks where people have read this book, and probably a lot of these other ones as well. Um, so this is just kind of a quick breakdown of some of those books, and what that's been like for me as far as that process. And again, there's certain things that will resonate with some of you that don't with others, and that's totally fine. um, I think I would love to have um, others on the podcast and talk through some of these ideas or books, or whatever has been meaningful to some of you, because I think the more that we can kind of understand, and we can get rid of this black and white, get rid of this idea that like I was talking about before, a lot of times growing up in the church or some type of religion that says this is the only way, and anything that varies from that is black. This is white. This is black. Um, that I think one of the potentially the most harmful things that can come from that is just even though you may then realize or start to believe that the church is not true, you can still see things in the lens of black and white. Oh, well, the church isn't true, so this is this and this and this. But just allow yourself to kind of step back and to look at thoughts independently, and to say, oh, what does this belief lead to? You know, and the most important thing I think is just focus on yourself. If you're always looking at other people and thinking, oh, well, what does this belief lead you to? And it allows you and gets you to the point of being very critical. And I would argue that what you can basically do that same exercise again. What does your thoughts and your analysis about other people's beliefs, what does that lead you to? And it's relatively likely that it leads you to judgment. It doesn't lead to peace and love. But if you can step back rather and say, um, you know, view things as everyone's journey is independent. Like, respect other people's space to have their own journey and to think through things. Because everyone has a reason for the way that they live, and it's impossible for us to say that we know exactly what they're going through and that we know what is right for other people. It's not possible. Because we are only ourselves. You can only have the thoughts in your own mind. You can only have your thoughts in your mind about another person or about another person's thoughts or beliefs. So remember that. The more you can embrace that this is an independent journey, can increase the amount of peace that you have in your life and towards other people. Thank you for listening. I hope this podcast episode was helpful, and we will see you guys back here for the next one. Take care.